unfortunately, there's been a lot of, top athletes, female footballers in Pakistan that actually missed out on the opportunity to represent their national team because the team was inactive for over 8 years. In Pakistan, we're still trying to figure out how we're going to have a women's domestic league. Definitely something I respect about my teammates so much, and they actually inspire me, is the fact of how committed and how dedicated and how hungry they are despite having any consistency. From the stuff that I've seen over the past couple of years, it's really evident that there's just a lack of support for a sporting infrastructure in the country, which is crazy because there's such amazing athletes that are there, and their success is not because of the system.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of What's Brown Got to Do with It. So today I am joined by Maria Khan. Now, for those of you who know Maria or don't know Maria is a professional footballer, and Maria also captains the Pakistan women's national team. So thank you, Maria, for joining today. How are you?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad we were finally able to make this happen.
I know this has been a long time coming, and it's such a, I think, pivotal moment in women in sports and South Asian women in sports in general that I was so excited to have you on the show. So with that, let's begin with if you can maybe share your journey as a female footballer player, and then, your journey about moving to captain the Pakistan women's football team. How did that journey look like for you?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the US as a first generation Pakistani. So both of my parents had come over after they got married from Pakistan in Peshawar. And I grew up in Denver, Colorado. And that is where my football journey began at the age of 6. So, was very fortunate to, be playing grassroots football at a very young age. And then as I progressed throughout the years, still liked football for whatever reason. So continued playing all the way throughout high school. And then when I got to my last year of high school, I got an offer to play Division I soccer at a couple of universities. And given I would have been the first child to, go to university, that had the opportunity to go to a university out of state. It was still like a new concept for my parents. So the offers that I had from universities outside of Colorado, I had to turn down because my parents weren't too crazy about sending their unmarried daughter outside of the state and outside of the house. So I accepted an offer from the University of Denver, which was literally like 20 minutes from my parents' home. So yeah, was close enough, but honestly, looking back on it, it was definitely the right decision, and really happy with, the playing experience I got, playing at Division I level, as well as the education that I received. So yeah, spent 4 years playing varsity soccer for the University of Denver. And then at the time, the Women's Pro League in the US was very volatile. So that was back in 2013. So there was one season it was there, one season it wasn't there. So me going to my South Asian parents and saying, hey, I want to play professional football after I just got, a university degree, definitely wasn't an option.
At least you got the degree first.
Yeah. They're definitely happy with that. And they're like, yeah, now you need to put it to use. So I decided to continue my education. And one of the MBA programs that I was looking at actually had a campus in Dubai. And so because I didn't get a chance to study abroad, simply because I was playing football, I didn't get that opportunity to go abroad and study. So I was like, why not? Let me go spend, 14 months doing an intensive MBA program, and I'll figure my life out after that. So moved to the UAE, got my degree, was still playing football, like on the amateur side, while I was here, while I was in the UAE. And then I found out about Pakistan women's national team through social media. And at the time, FIFA had placed a ban on Pakistan. So there was no
Okay, yeah.
actual international activity happening. So, removing that, I actually was able to participate in a national tournament in Pakistan. That's held
Hmm.
once a year for all of the women's teams, both departments and academies as well, or private clubs. So participated in that. That's how, and that was back in 2018 with a team called Royal Eagles.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how my Pakistan footballing journey began, and then just stayed involved ever since then. And after that, in 2020, got my first call up with a 1 week camp that we had
Mm.
after FIFA had reinstated the national team, and then got banned again for a little bit. And then back in July of last year, FIFA lifted the ban, and we were actually, both men's and women's were able to participate, and the women's actually participated in the South Asian Women's Championship
Mm.
in September back in Nepal. So that was our first time back after 8 years. And yeah, here we are now. I think maybe 13, 14 games in or something like that. I can't
Oh wow.
remember.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's
it's
been quite
definitely
the
been
year.
yeah, it's been a volatile journey for Pakistani football for sure over the years.
100%.
You don't know if you're coming or going, but I think like living in the States and has maybe even over other countries such as the UK, there's a certain privilege that comes with that in terms of the exposure. So not only, you have the university exposure and being able to play at that level, but even from a support network, for example, it's something that is quite perceived as normal by your parents who, see that girls playing sports. It's a pretty normal thing. So, what were some of the challenges that you faced as a female athlete in Pakistan, and how did you overcome that when you did move over to the team over there?
Yeah, so, in all honesty, I have to, put it out there that the experience that I've had in Pakistan has been absolutely great. And the challenges that, you know, I might have faced in the US are very different to what my teammates would have faced. There's a
Mm,
lot of, unfortunately, there's been a lot of, top athletes, female footballers in Pakistan that actually missed out on the opportunity
mm,
to represent their national team because the team was inactive for over 8 years, right? So a lot of players, who were in their prime, maybe, some
mm,
years back, might have missed the opportunity. So I think it'd be hard for me, and I don't think it would be fair for me to compare, my challenges that I faced versus what the girls actually in Pakistan had to go through, right? So I think
mm,
them not being able to just play regularly, play consistently. For me, I
mm,
had those opportunities. I was able to play regular football. My parents knew what my pathway looked like. I
mm,
knew what my pathway looked like. I knew what I needed to do to get to each milestone, to get an athletic scholarship. Whereas,
mm,
in Pakistan, we're still trying to figure out how we're going to have a women's domestic league, which right now is
mm,
is non-existent. So, definitely something I respect about my teammates so much, and they actually inspire me, is the fact of how committed and how dedicated and how hungry they are despite having any consistency, any
mm.
sustainability, any stability or anything like that. So, definitely something that motivates me, and I'm really just grateful to call them my teammates.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the same for the men's football in Pakistan
Yeah,
as well. I mean, a bit of
yeah,
a probably less challenging in the sense that from the gender perspective, um, but there are probably a lot of similarities
yeah.
that they've
Just
also
athletes in
faced
general,
in.
like not just football, right? Like it's across the board from
Mm,
what I've seen. And again, like I am still very new to the athletic climate in Pakistan, but from the stuff that I've seen over the past couple of years, it's really evident that there's just a lack of support
mm,
for a sporting infrastructure in the country, which is crazy because there's
mm,
such amazing athletes that are
mm,
there, and their success is not because of the system, it's despite the
mm.
system, if that makes sense.
Despite, yeah, Absolutely. I actually love that. Um, and it's true because now there's so much more hype about sport, other sports, just other than cricket, right?
Yeah.
So there are so many people doing such amazing things. And it's so great to see that as a country, or just the South Asian countries in general, like how much they're kind of doing for South Asians in different sports and not just your stereotypical cricket
Yeah.
space. Um, and so you were praised by um, the president of Pakistan for the your goal against the against Saudi Arabia, I believe. And that was actually a memorable like moment for women in sports, as well as quite significant for women's football in Pakistan. How do you think that just that praise alone from such a high level impacted women and football in Pakistan?
Yeah, so I think if we remove the goal and what happened there, and I think just the overall team performance that we had, right? Given that was literally only our second time together as a
Mm,
team, right? After the SAF championship. So, for us to get a result for our country, finishing second in that tournament with, yes, Saudi Arabia was fairly new. They had been active for maybe a year at that point, but you have teams like Comoros and Mauritius who, were active national teams. So for
mm,
us to be able to just get a result and get that recognition, from not only Pakistani football fans, but people who knew nothing about Pakistan
mm,
football or women's football in the country. I think, it's something that, I spoke about earlier this week after our, tournament that we just played is, it's, yeah, the likes and the clicks and the views and all that stuff are great, but really that type of awareness really just
mm,
does so much more for developing football countries than people think, right? Anytime
mm,
people who don't know anything that's happening around women's football or just sports in general
mm,
in the country to say, oh, we have a national team, and kind of that like aha
mm,
moment, it's it is powerful, and it is important, and we have to continue to keep doing our parts and raising as much awareness as we can around sports in Pakistan.
mm. So, how do you think, in that sense, your role as the captain um, evolved since, like, you became captain? What responsibilities kind of came with it? Because, as you mentioned before, a lot of your teammates haven't had the opportunities that you might have had, and there's a lot of maybe disparity there amongst definitely the skills, the socioeconomics, lots of those things. So, how did that impact you, your performance, and your responsibilities?
Yeah, I think, for me, it's definitely been a journey. My
Mm,
CV prior to, being named captain did not have captaining a national team on it. So, it's something that, I've done my best to try to take in stride. And I know I've messed up, and, I've probably had moments where, maybe my teammates weren't happy with, something that was done or said, or, you
mm,
know, and, I'm learning, right? And I'm kind of, as people say,
mm,
like you kind of grow on the job, and, you learn from your mistakes. And I think it's just been
mm,
really nice though, because I really have had like a really big support within the team. There's been some, amazing teammates that I've had that have kind of, let me vent to them sometimes, right? Because I need to,
mm,
make sure that, I know what's happening and how girls are feeling. And like I said, I'm sure I've gotten it wrong, at some point.
mm,
But I think just being able to improve and just continue to have some self awareness and identify areas that I need to get better at, right? Because we have to keep in
mm,
mind, like in our team, there's such different types of players and such different types of girls and such a big age range, right? You have girls who are
mm,
16 all the way up until girls who are in their 30s and women who are in their 30s, right? So, you have different generations involved in the team and stuff like
mm,
that. But like I said, I've had an amazing, support around me from the girls. And it's just, they're such a respectful bunch. And I feel like a
mm.
lot of times, even if I say something wrong, they'll just go with it. Which which is nice sometimes, but I think it is also important to make sure that we do create an environment and a culture where
Mm,
players feel that they can speak up, right? And players feel that
Mm.
they can, challenge what's being said. And like I said, there are probably a ton of things I've missed, throughout this past year. But again, we're working on getting better and continuing to lay
Mm.
down the foundation.
Well, how do you see when you see the families of these girls? Like, how have you noticed the evolvement of the support network for them?
Yeah, I
Which
think.
obviously brings itself confidence. And if you don't have that support at home, then how confident are you going to be on the field?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, at first, a lot of the newer players who, were new to football, new to international football when we first started out, I think, the families had some reservations, but I think once they
Mm.
saw, their daughter, on TV, being praised,
Mm.
getting that recognition, and, they saw that most importantly, she was in a like safe environment, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
she wasn't able to just go out and roam or, do anything like that. Like we had a pretty like strict camp and a safe camp where, we had security guards with us all the time. When we're in Pakistan, the facilities and the complex that we're staying at are very guarded. So,
Mm.
we are in a safe bubble almost. So I
Mm.
think there was that. I think, again, the fact that their daughters are employed, right? That is
Mm.
always a
Mm.
big deal.
Of
And,
course.
and some of these players, like some of the girls, are actually, some of the, main supporters of their family,
Yeah.
which, the national team has enabled them to be able to do so. I think the wages, like something that's really important to highlight, which I don't think ever gets enough recognition from about PFF, is the fact that the wages for men and women are
Mm.
the same, right? So we
Oh,
get equal,
wow.
yeah, we get equal pay, um, men's teams and women's teams. So, that's something that's really powerful. And again, I think the families are on board, which is nice,
Yeah.
which is really nice. A lot more than people would think.
Right. But how do you deal with, or how do they deal with some of the backlash that comes from, a lot of like the community or people in the country who still are in the mindset that a woman's place is in the kitchen or in the
Yeah.
home, and, I mean, playing football is far from like their own ideologies.
Yeah, so I think, we have this saying on the team where it's like, if you can't handle it, stay out of the comments, on all the
Yeah.
posts and everything. But, those things are always going to be there, right? And
Mm.
I think the more that we can do and the more awareness that we can bring as a national team, the fact that, we are respectful, a really respectful bunch. We like a lot of the times, people don't know what goes on, behind the locker room, right? What's
Mm.
happening in the locker room, the stuff that we're doing, with our faiths and with our religion, and, the prayers
Mm.
that we're saying as a team, and all the stuff in the huddles, all
Mm.
the stuff, people don't see that, right? And they don't hear about
Mm.
it. But again, the backlash is always going to be there. There's always going to be that, um, that nuance that you said of, women should be in the
Mm.
kitchen, and, especially Pakistani women or South Asian women. But again, the what we can do as athletes is just put our heads down, be respectful, and, make sure that every time we're representing our country, we do it in a very
Mm.
positive way.
And prove them all wrong, like prove
Yeah,
the
yeah,
haters wrong, prove them
absolutely.
on the field. So what are your own like hopes and aspirations for the future of women's, maybe not just football, but also women sports, and how do you see it growing and developing?
Yeah, so my experience for the past 10 years has been in the Middle East, and now for the past couple of years, South Asia. And I think it's a slow growth
Mm.
in this part of the world, but it's happening. And I think what's amazing to see and to feel is that there is such amazing talent in these countries, right? Not just
Mm.
Pakistan, but even the
Yeah.
neighboring South Asian countries. Like the teams and the players that we've played against, like these girls could easily play in the US. These girls could easily play in
Yeah.
Europe, but a lot of times they're getting overshadowed by, talent that is sitting in the West.
Yeah.
So I think for me,
Yeah.
it's just being able, I would love to see talent in this part of the world or athletes in this part of the world or brown athletes really showcased and
Mm.
highlighted, because I think there's a different level of resilience, and commitment
Yeah.
and dedication that these athletes have displayed, and it should be highlighted and it should be showcased because they're just as good. So I
Yeah. I
would
mean,
really
I
love
feel,
to see there's like a bridge, between
mm,
athletes getting opportunities, not just in Asia, but the Western world as well.
yeah. I mean, it's probably there's a lot of like drive there, a drive that isn't necessarily the same in the Western world,
Yeah, it's a hunger.
purely
There's a
because,
hunger there.
yeah, that's it. That's the
Yeah,
word. Yeah. I like
yeah.
that.
There's
Um, So when you have played, against or with our neighboring South Asian countries, I mean, do you notice the similarities in your achievements, similarities in your struggles? Is there a comparison even there?
Yeah, because I think culturally, the it's pretty similar, among South
Hmm.
Asia and the Middle East culturally. So yeah, there's definitely challenges, similar challenges across the board. Conservative families, not thinking that this is the right thing for their daughter. Some girls playing without their families even knowing, and
Oh.
having that support. So there's definitely challenges, but again, something that is just so amazing to see is just these girls and these athletes just putting their head down and
Hmm.
staying in their lane and staying focused and just getting better and playing, right? And I think, like you said, to your
Hmm.
point earlier, is in order to prove people wrong, you just got to put your head down, do the work, and keep it moving. Because
Hmm.
these stereotypes, and unfortunately, we can slowly chip away at them, but for the
Yeah.
time being, they're here and they're gonna be here.
Well, yeah. I mean, you've got the stereotypes that kind of derive from cultures outside of our own, but
Yeah,
then we've got our own internal
as well.
stereotypes as
Yeah,
well that we have to. And I think as a South Asian community, it's sometimes that struggle is so much harder because you feel like you're constantly fighting, against your own people, against people who don't necessarily relate to your culture or your upbringing. It's just always proving yourself to somebody. And so, yeah, getting your head down and doing that, although that is a way to do that and have less conversations and more kind of action. But I'm sure that it, at points, it becomes draining, like physically, mentally. And so, how do you think that sports can be used as a platform to empower women and break those societal barriers?
yeah. So this is actually like something I'm really passionate about. Is I love the life skills that sports teaches, and
Mm,
especially team sports, right? Like I know, for me personally, the experiences that I've had as an athlete within a team have helped me in my corporate life, if that makes sense, right?
mm,
So just being able to
yeah, yeah,
navigate different personalities, getting the best out of your teammates. It's helped me in my marriage as well, right? Me and my husband
yeah,
are like constantly reminding each other, hey, we're teammates, right?
yeah, yeah.
We're not a derby. We're not, here to
Yeah.
go against each other, stuff like that. So, I think the life skills and the potential,
Mm,
interpersonal skills that sports has the opportunity to teach, like you said, again earlier, the confidence that it will give the girl, the ability to stand up in times where she might not agree with something. This kind of stuff is really really important, and sports really does teach you that. So I think it's a slow chip. We're slowly chipping
mm,
away, but I think as we continue to, like, as and with sports, right, results matter, right?
mm. Of
Results
course,
matter and
yeah.
performance matters, and I
Yeah.
think something that's really great is we have people wanting to represent Pakistan from all over the
Mm,
world, right? And
yeah.
you have athletes wanting to represent their mother countries, and something that's so
Yeah.
amazing is that these, even the, like my teammates, for example, we said at this camp, like, these girls have to remember that, they're not just the best Pakistani players from Pakistan
Mm,
representing the
mm,
country, they're the best Pakistani players in the world, to
mm.
represent their country. And I think just giving them that bit of
Wow.
belief where, there's Pakistani girls that are wanting to be a part of the national team, but sorry, the
Yeah.
girls in Pakistan, they're the ones, they are better. without any resources, and they
Yeah.
are. And so I think that's
Yeah.
always like when there's this talk of, oh, foreign players, diaspora players, oh, they shouldn't be representing
Yeah.
Pakistan, stuff like that. Like those conversations are always going to be there, but at the end of the day, it's about the best, who are the best players to represent the country and to turn around results. Because without results
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
without performances, it's just going to be like, oh, that's a waste of money, no matter what sport it is.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
we do, as
And you need the
athletes, we do have to
visibility.
perform. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As women, if we don't get that visibility in sports, then how do other young girls or how do families, see the importance of that?
Absolutely.
And so, one of the other things, to your point about the South Asian diaspora outside, it's like as expat South Asians or we feel very close to our culture. We feel very close to our homes. Just, for many of us, even if we haven't been raised, in Pakistan or in India or Bangladesh, it's like we've been going there. We've been visiting, in some ways, there's an affiliation that is more connected through our parents who immigrated and left a part of them behind than sometimes, my friends who actually were born and raised there. Um, so you can't bypass that.
Absolutely.
But with that, can you share any words or advice or words of inspiration for young girls, not just in Pakistan, just young South Asian girls in general who aspire to pursue a career in football or just sports? Um, what are maybe three things that you think South Asian women can do today to further themselves in sports?
I think the first one is resilience, um, because there's going to be a lot of pushback. There's going to be
Mm,
a lot of rejection. So you're going to
mm,
need to definitely have the resilience to kind of keep pushing through those barriers and breaking them, and the, like I said, slowly chipping away at those things that prevent us from progressing and moving forward. Um, Definitely hard work. This is not easy. Um,
mm.
I've It's taken me 32 years to sign my first professional contract.
Wow.
So
Mashallah.
it's taken a lot of hard work. It's taken a lot of sacrifices.
Mm,
But I promise you, the reward is, it's worth it. It's definitely worth it.
yeah.
And then the third one, I would say, self awareness. I think is really
Mm,
important, and accountability. I think are some really
yeah.
key things that a lot of times a lot of athletes don't have it, right? They think, oh, I deserve
Mm,
this, and oh, I'm owed this. You're not owed anything. You don't deserve anything. Anytime you wear
yeah.
this badge, like, you need to wear it with a badge of honor, because it's not something that's just handed out like candy. Right?
Yeah. True.
And I think a lot of times some people and some athletes might take it for granted, and you need to make sure that you have the accountability that every time you put the shirt on, you put the badge on, that you know that this could be taken away at any moment, right? Like
Mm,
we can
yeah.
be replaced. So it's funny because, like, our coach has this saying where the national team will be there, right?
Yeah.
Pakistan women's national team will be there, but the picture will change, right? Who's in it will change,
Yeah.
right? So,
True.
you need to have the self awareness and the accountability to make sure that, you are doing the work that you need to do and putting in that hard work and having that resilience to make sure that you stay as part of that picture as long as you can.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah,
there's
of course.
hundreds of other athletes that are working just as hard, if not harder, than you, ready to replace you and take your spot.
Mm, mm.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, those would be
How do
my.
you think those are actually really like critical points there? So for sure, 100% agree. Um, but how do you think? I mean, I don't like to compare, but how do you think women in sports and men in sports, like, what are some of the major differences, or where is the gap that people can actually help to close to bridge that gap?
Yeah, so I mean, if we kind of strip it back to basics, like the men's game has been evolving for how many years, right? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
the women's game is only, maybe recently starting to transform. It's been there, right? But the
Yeah.
excuse me, but the commitment to growing it might not necessarily
Mm,
have always been there like it is now. So I think we're still behind. I think,
mm,
even especially like your developed leagues in Europe, for example, like you have in England, for example, some teams
mm.
who are playing championship football in the women's league, not all of those players are getting paid.
Wow.
It's hard for international players to come over because some of the championship teams can't even provide
Mm,
visas for those
wow.
players. So
Yeah, true.
again,
Yeah.
it's if that's England and same with the US, imagine what's
Mm,
happening, in other parts of the world,
yeah.
right? So I think we got some ways to go. Again, differences come down to facilities, resources, access, money. There's a lot of things we could go into, but I think first and
Mm,
foremost is continuing to highlight, where those differences, where those discrepancies are, raise awareness, and
mm,
again, hold governing bodies accountable, right? Because
mm.
if things are not imposed from governing bodies, then no one's going to do it, right? Like no one's going to want to spend
Yeah.
extra money if they don't have to.
Yeah.
So unless
Absolutely.
those
Yeah.
unless those governing bodies, impose rules and regulations and requirements and holds, these clubs and
Mm.
these leagues and these federations accountable, we're gonna be in
Uh,
this continuous cycle of, oh, we're growing but not that much.
Not that much. But I mean, I'm sure there's been a lot of work behind the scenes for those governing bodies to even, for women especially, get a seat at the table to, even get the funding and all those things. I'm sure it's taken decades of kind of work to get there. So
Yeah, we're definitely
kudos
like,
now.
if you look at like female athletes nowadays, we're literally standing on the shoulders of women
Yeah.
who have been fighting this battle and athletes that have been fighting this battle
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah. I mean, my mind is still blown at the equal pay. So I think it's just amazing. Like that just made me so happy. Maria, before we finish, there's a question that I like to ask all my guests, and that is, what's brown got to do with it for you? So, what does being brown mean to you?
It's a deep question. And I think we can dedicate a whole episode to that. But I think for me, it means community. It
Hmm.
means family. It I think it's who I am, and it's someone I've always been proud to be. I think, when I
Hmm.
look back, even like 10 years ago, before I moved to the Middle East, and people would always ask me, "Oh, where are you from?" Because your name's Maria, but you sound
Hmm.
Western and you look Mexican, right? And
Yeah.
the first thing is no, I'm Pakistani, and I think that's something
Hmm.
that I've always put before being American, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It
anytime
makes absolute
anyone asks
sense.
me, I'm like, I'm Pakistani, and I think it's just the heritage, it's pride,
Hmm.
but most importantly, I think it is that community and that family element that I love so much
Yeah.
about our people.
I love it too. Agreed. So it's funny because a lot of people, when you ask them this question, they actually values, family, community are the three that come
Is
up
it
the most.
okay?
So
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
so it's in line what people think. But thank you, Maria, for joining today. I know you're so busy. I
Thank you.
think you've just joined Saudi, right? Like a team in Saudi
Yeah,
playing for pro football there. So congratulations on
thank
that.
you.
And honestly, like your achievements are so amazing. I wish from the bottom of my heart that we just see our women just progressing in so many ways, and sports is just one of those. So for anybody listening, please like, follow, share all of the social media pages. If we can get the visibility out, then it just gives help give that traction to what all of you are trying to achieve. Thank you again and good luck. We'll speak to you soon. Bye.